So yeah, there has been a little bit change in my title. Now I've been serving as field chair in business analytics, and we also started a new center, university level center in analytics and data science space. So thank you. Yeah, being short doesn't have many advantages, but perfect. Thank you. So today I'll try to give you an take about basically what I've been involved with, also what the center will be aiming to do. And again, I think Damien set the stage very nicely, and the talks in the morning sessions were definitely relevant in setting the stage. So before doing that, let me give you an idea about my background. So I got my PhD in decision sciences, so I have more of an applied statistics training. And I'll talk a little bit about what I do for research. So I'm a Bayesian statistician, so I work in the probabilistic modeling space, and I'm also working on computational decision models. So I'll try to give you examples about how these things are relevant, and some of the research I talk about today are funded by NSF, Air Force, as well as Texas Human and Health Services. So big picture, right? Again, being a business school professor, I want to share my take. Obviously, we all started with people, right? When you look into the businesses, and then we came up with processes, and then we added technology. They all became mainstream. We can't even think about businesses or organizations without those three. But now I think AI, analytics, data, depending on your maturity level, how you frame it, would depend on your organization. But it's also moving from a tool to become a strategic asset. Again, when I talk to colleagues across the industry, for some of them, they are just still using it as a tool, right? They take the output, embed it into their current processes, but more and more, starting with big tech and basically some of your companies, now AI is becoming, or data or analytics at large is becoming more of the fourth building block. So I think that's a little bit paradigm change. And obviously, I think in the earlier talk, our Amazon colleague talked about how AI is used for driving efficiency, innovation, competitiveness, and customer satisfaction. I'm not going to give more examples, but I really think that it's becoming the fourth building block. Again, this summit has more focused on smart cities, utilities, infrastructure, but we have been seeing the impact across all organizations and businesses, right? Some mature than others. So what I will try to do, I will try to give two examples about what I do and how it's relevant. So this may be a little bit different than what we have discussed so far in the summit, but I work in fraud analytics space. So again, when you think about this space, and my focus is on healthcare, in healthcare, we have almost 18-20% of the US GDP. Just think about it, like I think the last numbers are more like $4.2 trillion. So each of us basically accounts for almost $12,000 in US when it comes to healthcare spend. So it's estimated that 3 to 10% of this money is being wasted. Either there is fraud, there is waste, abuse. So what I try to do, we are generating enormous amounts of data. And since, I believe, 1986, we are using some statistical methods to help with going through that data. But now the advances in computing, as well as data space, and now AI, basically opens new doors for these type of fraud detection and even prevention. So I have been working with Texas Health and Human Services, Office of Inspector General Office. And the idea is that, again, how can we go through basically almost billions of transactions, millions of beneficiaries, to make sense of this data and to come up with audits, leads for audits, to figure out whom we should investigate first. Because that's one of our challenges, right? I mean, there is lots of data that is being generated. We have more or less capable tools understanding what looks different or what looks suspicious. But when it gets to the human space, we have only a number of auditors. So how do we use their time wisely? So that's more or less what I've been working on. And this work has basically involved sampling, data mining, integrated decision making. And this is a space where we don't foresee full automation because of the legal constraints. However, still, data and AI as we speak is changing this space. Just think about it. I mean, I'm sure everyone hopefully at least has been to the doctor's office once a year, right? For preventive checks and whatnot. Most of the time, even we may not be paying copay for that. Even we may not be using a government, basically insurance program. But most of the time, we are not part of the process. As the beneficiary, as the consumer, customer in quotes, we don't take any responsibility. So that's one major reason why there is enormous amounts of overpayments in this domain. And compare this versus a standard credit card transaction, right? Anytime, basically, our skin is in the game. Anytime there is a potential fraudulent transaction, basically our financial company checks with us to get the label, if it's even in the very basic sense, if it's a 1 or 0, fraud or not. And we kind of share that information to them almost instantly, right? Otherwise, there is a blockage. But we are far away from that kind of basically transparency and being able to take quick actions in the healthcare space. And we have been working towards it. The second area I want to talk about is decision-making under uncertainty. Again, there are many different names for this space, right? Depending on your background. Basically, stochastic optimization, again, think about control processing, dynamic programming, and most of you are kind of using these type of models in the background in what you do. What I want to point out to is we have the uncertainty generated by the nature, as we like to call it, the old school probability distributions and whatnot. But now we are also getting into the space where we are also taking into account uncertainty generated by other intelligent decision makers or machines or other AI engines. Again, we have a name for this, right? Games, starting from all the way from Nash. But initially, we have been really solving small games. So now we are moving to a phase where basically other people or machines may be manipulating our data, maybe taking adverse actions so that the output is in a way that would favor them. And in the last 15 years, we have an area that addresses this, right? Adversarial machine learning, or now we are calling it more adversarial AI. So I have been working in this space on an Air Force project. And one of the interesting things is that how do we even impact the uncertainty with our decisions? And some of you may be aware of what we call as A/B testing, right? Let's say that you go to the website of Amazon. It's a likelihood that you may be seeing a different website version. And Amazon learns how you interact with that particular website snapshot and provides a more tailored image either for you or for the next user based on if you made a purchase or how your interaction was. So the uncertainty of you clicking in a certain space is determined, is impacted by your decisions. So we also call this as exploration exploitation, and there are multiple examples across different areas. So one of the interesting aspects is you may have seen this image before, right? Especially now with the advance of deep learning and relevant classification methods. In computer vision, we have made big strides. But the reality is that depending on the data that is being fed into these algorithms, if you look into the left side of the images, they are almost alike. Especially to the human eye, they are almost identical. But the prediction that would come out of this would be totally different. So how do we address that? And again, this is something we have been working on in the last decade especially. So what I've been working with Air Force is when it comes to these, what we call as supervised algorithms, classification algorithms, we are in relatively good shape. What about unsupervised algorithms or classical statistical algorithms, or even dealing with adversaries that do these over time? You may have heard about this boiling frog example, right? You just increase the temperature a little bit, and then frog doesn't understand that basically it's being boiled. So what if, and we are dealing with adversaries like that? And the interest to Department of Defense is we already know that some of our adversaries are doing that, right? They may have basically breached some of our patents, but they are not going all in, right? They are just trying to utilize it over time. First, how do we model how their attacks would be? But more importantly for us, how do we robustify our either AI or machine learning methods and basically come up with better defense mechanisms? So our work tries to advance that space. So challenges and opportunities. Again, most of these have been mentioned one way or another. So I will try to spend my time on things that we haven't discussed much. The way I see it, for instance, integration of AI to business ecosystem. And I think earlier today, Michael was mentioning this briefly. But right now, we are still trying to figure out, right, how all these powerful algorithms with all their flaws and opportunities and strengths fit into our ecosystems. So that's a big, I guess, figuring out moment for us. But when you go to more mainstream companies, even Fortune 500, everyone is trying to obviously jump into the bandwagon, but most of them either don't know what they are looking for, or how this can be, how this big investment could translate to helping them meet their business goals. And obviously this will take time, right? But I think that's one of the open-ended questions. Obviously, pretty much in the 10 minutes I spoke here, I'm sure there are 10 AI startups that was started, right? So many smart people trying to address this, coming up with products. But we will see basically what we will end up seeing in the mid-run or long run. And in terms of cost, and I will also try to mention this, like the current paradigm seems to be more centering of going bigger, right? More data, more computing, but these things cost as well. So does everyone need that? Questionable. So how does that also look like? Again, and I think there has been quite a discussion, I guess, especially in the last few years. Obviously, we want to model the data we have, but at this point, more or less, we know, right? After some failures, especially not in all contexts, data may not be the only answer. Data has its flaws. We are all well aware of that. So big data, more data may not be the answer at times. And I think later today, we'll talk about digital twins. So how do we bring those computational methods to support basically what we can do with these, some of the AI methods? Or now in the last 5 years, I guess we have been more talking about, let's say, physics-inspired machine learning. How do we bring what we learned over last 500 years, maybe last 30 years, to the basic default, to even make our AI methods more powerful? So those are some of the things I think that are going to be exciting to figure out. When you look from the business ecosystem, again, some of the open-ended questions. So earlier today, we talked about data governance and potentially creating data assets for the company, within the company. Again, we all talk about data, AI all day, but again, it's questionable if most of the employees, or not necessarily users, but even the employees have that enough data literacy or AI literacy. Even like the relatively basic notions, right? I think there is quite the hype, and we are all excited about that. But jumping steps, going a little bit quickly, I think may result in leaving some folks behind. And then we need to come back and educate basically employees or even users. I mean, obviously, these things are going to take time. We also don't know exactly what we are dealing with. And at least in the university, that has been one of our goals. Now, there are different levels, right? We are trying to also create opportunities for data literacy, AI literacy, so that even pretty much any student in my vision should have some basic fundamental AI data literacy. And that's more and more where we are going towards. And you may have recognized some universities are even making intro to AI data type of classes as part of the required curriculum. And at Texas State also, I think that's the direction that we are going towards. Data content quality. I think this is one of the important areas. And earlier panels, basically speakers touch upon this. Now we are in a world where AI generates content as well. So whom do we trust? How do we control all these enormous increasing amounts of data that is being populated over there? At some point, again, and I think it's a similar conversation to misinformation, right? We are all generating content, and how do you even rate them, or how do you know what to trust? Same thing goes for AI models when you think about it. And even now, AI methods themselves are generating data. So how do we basically find our way within that jungle? I think that is and that will be one of the fundamental questions going forward. And security, we kind of talked about it in the previous panel. Transparency, again, especially in most of the public use cases, and similar thing for my fraud analytics work. Like, if you can't tell the hospital why you are investigating them in a sense, then they basically lawyer up and beat you in court. So it's a lose-lose proposition. You are losing everyone's time. So again, that explainability, especially anywhere we see public is involved, is fundamental and will be even more fundamental. Levels of automation, human interaction, again, that will be also interesting going forward. And that's one of the areas that we think that it's important. Having said that, I will also want to spend some time talking about our center. So this is just launched, actually, September 1st. And this is a university level research center. It's brand new. We have a totally multidisciplinary setup, 18 core faculty from 7 different colleges. And I'm lucky to have Dr. Valles being one of them. So we have both methods and domain experts. So this being a university level center gives us a little bit advantage. This is not necessarily only, let's say, computer science or engineering. We believe that real hard problems are only solved by teams, providing different perspectives. And this team has members who are specialized in statistics, optimization, computing, and as well as human aspects, subject domain aspects as well. So I think during the first day, right, we were talking about climate change and AI. So again, you definitely need a multidisciplinary team over there, right? And yesterday I wasn't able to attend, but I'm sure there were good talks about smart water and whatnot. So when you look at it, again, it's not only, these are not problems where only one area can solve. So we believe that we will basically bring that collective expertise. And I listed some of the areas where each of basically fields kind of set up. The way that we envision this, again, we will be creating research partnerships. So there will be 3 focus areas. Obviously, the main one is research, but we also will be looking at education and training, as well as community, industry, and students. Because we believe that without one of these, it won't be the complete puzzle. In terms of workforce development, last year, with the support of Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, we were able to initiate a data analytics certificate, 10 modules, and now we are looking into how we can tailor it or leverage it with respect to basically our partners' needs. So these range from really introduction to data all the way to computer vision application. So another thing, students are a big part of what we do. We are trying to bring industry and our students and faculty together with these analytics showcase events. So, for instance, these are some photos from our first year event. And you can see, and I think Shrik was mentioning that yesterday, one of the nice things about our students, they really represent Texas. When you basically look at this, and we are basically working on this, and because of the nice composition that we have both methods areas as well as domain expertise areas, we are able to bring STEM even to more underrepresented domains. So talking about research, let me give you an idea about some of our ongoing projects. So one of our criminal justice faculty members have an ongoing relationship with Austin Police Department. And I think she's not here today, but also Ted Lear, who was a panelist earlier, I think has been working towards that project. But when you look into crime analytics, again, there had been a huge hype in the last 10 years, right? I guess the idea was that we will figure out where the crime is. And most of the initial hype kind of died because even like the basic premise, right? You end up sending more police officers to where the crime was seen, then you observe more crime, and you basically end up with a really unequitable solution. So how can we bring people aspect to that problem? And how can we bring some of our methods expertise? For instance, figuring out some of the hotspots. Can we help patrolling to deter from crime even before it happens? So obviously, there are different types of crime. How do we embed that into a resource allocation problem? That's the challenge, right? I mean, all the basically police departments across the nation have. There are not enough law enforcement officials, at least based on their estimates. So how do we use the resources we have in the most effective way? So we have a group basically of faculty working on these problems, but also one of the premises of computer vision, right? We have, I think now it's almost required in most of the police districts, we have body cams. How do we learn from that body cam footage? Both to train our law enforcement officials, also help them basically make better decisions going forward. I think one of the premises is contextualization, right? And I think that also relates to the mental health, use of AI in mental health discussion. Right now, we don't have great contextualization in mental health type of products where AI is used. But if we can do that, if we can condition to specific to that person or to that group, I think future is bright. And this is an area that we have been working on. Some of our faculty have been working on disaster response. Again, it looks like climate change is here, right? These disasters are happening more often than not. So now we are seeing 1 in 100-year events, 2 times in the 5 years. There is lots of uncertainty. There is so much we don't know. How do we incorporate that and basically come up with better decision making? And I think in the last 3 years also, we have been fortunate in both federal funding and state of Texas funding. We have been, I guess, set of faculty have been looking at these problems. So one of the interesting things, I think also Dr. Valles here has been involved with, data generation. So we talk about diversity, but one of the challenges, and I talked about contextualization, but one of the challenges we have, sometimes our data sets don't let us or don't enable us to do that contextualization. It's more of a results with a one-size-fits-all type of product. So one way is to create data, basically, also while including underserved communities. So can we have a culturally responsive AI or data science? Not only simulation, right, the way that most of the big tech data generation is based on, But can we also include basically those underrepresented groups in the data generation? And again, Dr. Vyas and his team has been involved with a really inspiring project, for instance, helping children with disorders. Think about autistic kids. I mean, because we don't necessarily collect data with them, about them, they end up basically being exposed to more emotion recognition tools of that are more like one size fits all. So can we change that? I think that's one of the inspiring research that our faculty has been working on. And obviously, we have been talking about smart cities, utilities, infrastructure, and pretty much in any talk, we at least mentioned data, analytics, AI once, right? So I think overall, for what we do, it's an exciting time. And what I will do is, because we are a new center, we want to involve industry as much as possible. And some of you in the room are already Cedar partners. I mean, Andres has been helping with this initiative a lot. So thank you, Andres. We appreciate it. But we are also looking to form an industry advisory board, creating industry liaisons, maybe work with folks from your teams. So I would appreciate any connections, any suggestions you may have. Having said that, Claudio, I guess I may be at my time. Perfect. Thank you for your time.
Since AI populates data that's unstructured, basically all over the internet, is there a mechanism that centralizes any AI versus AI that can be exposed? Do you have like a network that would saying, we kind of got that, or somebody else comes and we have that? Is there any alert that somebody else says? You have to be very cognizant of that.
I think, to the best of my knowledge, there is not. There have been efforts towards that. And for instance, our government, right? So I don't know if you are aware, but I think now it's kind of public. CIA has been working on their own ChatGPT. So obviously there are those dossiers, right, about all of us out there. So are they public? Not necessarily. Sometimes they are in commercial hands, sometimes they are in government. And I believe that there were some promising blockchain related initiatives, basically describing what you just suggested. I think that's probably where we are heading towards, but to the best of my knowledge, I don't know of any like central platform. And now I think one interesting thing is, obviously, especially in the last 2 years, we have been more talking about regulation of AI, right? So, and our state of California or EU, they have been, I think, talking something along those lines as well, to give people more power of their data and give them more educated opinions. But however, again, I don't know if there is anything that is usable or with any concrete plans. Thank you for the question.
Do you see any emergence of meta tagging of AI-generated data or information or applications or images, such that there's a watermark or something that's there to make sure that if it's forensically needing to be looked at, something can attest to where it came from?
I do. I mean, again, when it comes to people, there is that fine line, right, between privacy, freedom of speech, and tagging where the content is coming from. But when it comes to machines, I think we can do better, especially when you think about the rate of data generation by AI. It's going to overwhelm us, right? And earlier today in the lunch, we were talking about what research even is going to look like in the next 10 years, in the next 50 years, right? Because, again, now we know that right or wrong, I mean, content is questionable, but ChatGPT can write research papers. And again,
that leads to a second point or question, is also if it becomes regenerative, and that is, it teaches itself, at some point you get to something of its own being, so to speak, which, if not watermarked, if not metadata tagged, if not self or aware that it came from some non-source other than an AI source, that could be a problem, right?
Right. Again, these are some of the fascinating conversations we all have been having, right? I guess no one has that, perfect insight of what will happen. Neither do I, but I think it's a fascinating angle. Again, and every 3 months, we read news that now it's fully on its own, right? Then it becomes a false alarm. So we'll see when that truly happens. But the way I see it, probably it's a question of if. The danger I see right now, there is some feedback loop involved through, let's say, reinforcement learning type of algorithms. But what would be the level of that feedback loop, right? How do we basically include human in that loop, AI loop? What level? Maybe when it becomes zero, then we get to where you are describing as the future. But right now, even we are generating from past data mostly, we have relatively minor, but still a human feedback loop, right? So it will be interesting when that human feedback loop could be replaceable or indistinguishable. Thank you.
So the case studies that you have shown, the disaster management and the healthcare, the mental health sort of things, the government is one organization in the world that processes a lot of data. Right? And then you can categorize the data into the business data, which they have it on the ERP and the operational side of things, and the external data where they collect the citizens' information, the patient's information. Rather than giving the money to the causes or like the projects that you are trying to, find use cases for AI, how open is the government in your state or in the US to be able to work with you, the universities and the industry, in creating case studies? I mean, I can think of opioid crisis, affordability, and there's so many endless cases. There is a hesitation for various reasons. It's a risk-averse culture, but however, there is so much opportunity. So my question, sorry, it's a long-winded question, how open are they, and have you really started those conversations of using the government's data with your approach to their own problems?
That's a great question. So my short answer would be it's better now compared to 10 years ago, but it's not where it should be or we want it to be. So, I mean, it's no surprise, right? Governments are slow. So that's, again, one of the challenges because it's such a fast-paced environment we are in. There have been many initiatives in modernizing both government infrastructure as well as the data infrastructure. So both the federal government and most of the states have basically open data stacks, mostly of aggregate data. But for instance, my personal experience, I have been involved with working with Payment Integrity Initiative. So this was a White House initiative that got started, I would say, 2016, 17. And many industry partners, many academic partners, we had almost once a monthly meetings. So everyone was giving feedback. We talked almost 3 years. Then there was a presidential election, right? So pretty much everyone in that council changed. So all that 3 years of talk ended up with nothing. And now there is a new, basically, payment integrity council with different players. And obviously, after the pandemic, that has become one of the main items, right? During the pandemic, we have wasted billions of dollars, I would say. And we know about it right now, thanks to the work of this committee. But I think one of the challenges is both pace and continuity when it comes to working with government. But still, NSF and other agencies, they are trying to put together government agencies with researchers and try to open up data sources. That would also help them in practice. So there are a number of initiatives. Again, things are getting better, not at the rate we want it to be. Thank you for the question. Thank you.